He almost didn't stop. That single step past the doorway would have erased the moment forever. But something pulled at him, sharp and familiar, like a memory refusing to stay quiet. The billionaire paused just inside the restaurant, the noise fading as his eyes locked onto a waitress weaving between tables with a practiced smile. For a second, he couldn't place why his chest felt tight. Then she turned slightly, and the past hit him all at once. The same face that once laughed beside him in a crowded classroom. The same eyes that had stared at the future with him when neither of them had a dollar to their name. She moved carefully, balancing plates, nodding politely to customers who barely looked at her. Years had shaped her differently, but not enough to hide who she was. His school friend. The girl who used to share her lunch when he forgot his. The one who believed he'd make something of himself long before anyone else did. He stood there longer than he meant to, unnoticed, watching as she worked with quiet determination. She approached his table without recognition, reciting the specials in a soft, steady voice. Up close, the weight of her exhaustion showed in the lines around her eyes, in the way she kept her shoulders squared as if refusing to bend. He almost said her name then, almost broke the fragile barrier of time, but hesitated. He didn't look like the boy she once knew. Tailored suit, calm confidence. A life that showed in every detail. To her, he was just another customer. As she turned to leave, something made her glance back. Their eyes met fully this time. Flicker of confusion crossed her face, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Recognition spread slowly, disbelief battling logic. Hand tightened around the notepad. She said his name under her breath, barely audible, as if afraid it might disappear if spoken aloud. Before either of them could say more, a voice cut through the air. The manager, impatient, sharp. He told her to hurry up, reminded her she had other tables waiting. She nodded quickly, apologizing, slipping back into her role. The billionaire watched the exchange in silence, something dark settling behind his calm expression. This wasn't anger yet, it was disappointment. When she returned, he spoke gently, asking how she'd been. The question carried years inside it. She answered carefully, choosing words that revealed nothing and everything at once. Fine, busy. Getting by. He could hear the effort behind each syllable. The manager hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation, clearing his throat, shifting his weight. Then the billionaire stood, not abruptly, just enough to change the balance of the room. He thanked her for the service, his tone respectful, and asked her to sit for a moment. The manager immediately stepped forward, insisting that wasn't allowed. The billionaire turned to him, calm and composed, and asked a simple question about how they valued the people who kept the place running every day. The manager laughed nervously, brushing it off, until the billionaire reached into his jacket and handed him a card. No drama. No announcement. Paper and ink. Manager's face drained of color as he read the name. His posture changed instantly. His voice soft. The billionaire didn't wait for an apology. He turned back to his old friend, looking at her the way he should have years ago. With attention, with respect. He told her he was glad to see her again. Truly glad. And for the first time since she'd walked up to the table, her smile wasn't forced. The restaurant felt different after that. Not quieter, but heavier, as if everyone sensed something important had shifted even if they didn't know why. The manager straightened his jacket, suddenly attentive in a way that felt rehearsed. He offered apologies that came too fast, too polished. The billionaire barely acknowledged him. His focus stayed on her. He sat slowly, unsure if she was allowed, unsure of what this moment even meant. Years of being told to hurry, to move, to not take up space had trained her body to hesitate. He noticed. That hurt more than anything else. Asked about her life, not in the casual way people do to be polite, but with real interest. Answered honestly this time. About working double shifts. About plans that kept getting postponed. About how life didn't turn out the way they once imagined when they talked about the future on a cracked school bench. He listened without interrupting. No advice, no comparisons. Listening. Manager hovered nearby, nodding along, pretending he'd always cared. When she mentioned putting off school because she couldn't afford it, the manager shifted uncomfortably. The billionaire noticed again. Every detail, every reaction. Other customers had started to stare. Whispers moved across tables. Someone recognized him now. Phones stayed down, but curiosity spread. Still, he didn't rush the moment. He told her he never forgot the people who believed in him when he had nothing. He admitted he thought about her more times than he could count. It surprised her. She'd assumed he vanished into another world and never looked back. The manager finally interrupted, suggesting they continue this conversation later, somewhere more private. The billionaire turned to him slowly and said there was Northwest better place than right here. He asked the manager how long she'd worked there. The answer came quickly. Years. Loyal. Reliable. The billionaire asked if she'd ever been promoted. The manager hesitated, then muttered something about policies and experience. That was when the billionaire smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was measured. He told the manager experience comes in many forms, and loyalty should count for something. Then he did something no one expected. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Short, quiet, purposeful. When he hung up, he looked at her and told her this didn't have to be her ceiling. Not if she didn't want it to be. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering opportunity. The kind she'd always deserved. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Straightened instead, pride returning to her posture. The manager swallowed hard, realizing this wasn't a scene he could control. Billionaire stood, thanked everyone for their patience, and left a tip so generous it made the receipt tremble in the manager's hands. As he walked toward the door, he turned back once more and told her to meet him tomorrow. Not as a waitress. As someone whose future was finally about to change. And for the first time in a long while, she believed it. She stood there long after he left, the sounds of the restaurant slowly returning to normal around her. Plates clinked. Orders were called. The manager cleared his throat and told her to get back to work, but his voice no longer carried authority. It carried uncertainty. For years, she had learned how to disappear on command. This time, she didn't rush. She finished the shift the same way she always had, calm and professional, but something inside her had shifted. A door she thought was sealed shut had cracked open. That night, she barely slept. Memories she had packed away came rushing back. Late afternoons after school. Dreams spoken out loud because they felt safe back then. She remembered how fiercely she had believed in him when no one else did, how she defended his ideas when others laughed. Somewhere along the way, life had taught her to stop expecting anything extraordinary. And yet, there it was again, standing in front of her like a question she couldn't ignore. The next morning, she arrived at the address he sent. Not a glass tower. Not a mansion. A modest office building filled with light. He greeted her without an audience, without ceremony. Just a genuine smile and the same calm presence she'd seen the night before. He asked her what she wanted, not what she thought she should say. The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in a long time. She spoke slowly at first, then with growing confidence. About ideas she'd had while watching how businesses worked from the ground up. About efficiency. About people. About how much potential gets wasted when no one listens. He listened the same way he always had, the same way he did when they were kids. With attention. With respect. By the end of the meeting, nothing was signed. No dramatic announcement was made. But a path was laid out. Training. A role that matched her strengths. Time to adjust. Space to grow. When she left, she didn't feel rescued. She felt seen. Back at the restaurant, the manager sensed the change before she said a word. She handed in her notice calmly. He tried to stall. Promised things that had never been possible before. She thanked him and declined. For once, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. Weeks later, she walked past the restaurant on her way to work, dressed not for service, but for purpose. She caught her reflection in the glass and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she had changed who she was, but because she had finally stopped shrinking. And somewhere in a quiet office, the billionaire smiled to himself, knowing that success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from. Real wealth, he realized, was remembering the people who stood beside you before the world did. The change didn't happen all at once. It arrived quietly, in small moments that felt almost ordinary until she looked back and realized how far she had come. Her new days were filled with meetings, learning curves, and the unfamiliar weight of being listened to. At first, she spoke carefully, choosing her words the way she used to choose tables at the restaurant, trying not to get in anyone's way. But the more she worked, the more confidence returned to her voice. Ideas she once kept to herself now shaped real decisions. He never hovered. That mattered. The billionaire didn't sit in on every meeting or announce her presence as some grand gesture. He treated her like any other professional, holding her to standards he knew she could meet. When she made mistakes, he let her fix them. When she succeeded, he let the work speak for itself. People noticed. Respect grew naturally, not because of who had brought her in, but because of what she brought with her. Still, not everyone was comfortable. Whispers followed her down hallways. Some wondered how she had landed there so quickly. Others assumed there was a story they weren't being told. She felt the old instinct to shrink, to explain herself before being questioned. Instead, she focused on the work. Data didn't care about rumors. Results didn't need defending. One afternoon, she was invited to sit in on a meeting with partners who had underestimated her from the moment she walked in. They spoke over her at first, dismissing her suggestions with polite smiles. She waited. Then, when the room stalled on a problem no one could solve, she spoke again. Calm. Clear. Practical. The solution was simple, built from years of watching systems fail and succeed from the ground up. The room went quiet. Then questions followed. This time, they were directed at her. Afterward, she stepped outside and let the moment settle. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not relief. Not gratitude. Belonging. She hadn't been given a seat at the table out of pity. She had earned it. That evening, she ran into her old manager by chance. He looked surprised, then uncomfortable, then curious. He congratulated her, awkwardly, mentioning how proud he was. She thanked him politely and kept walking. She didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. Some chapters don't need revisiting once they've taught you what you needed to learn. Later, she met the billionaire for coffee. Not to report progress, but to talk like old friends. They laughed about school memories, about how young they had been, how certain. She thanked him, finally, not for changing her life, but for seeing her when no one else had. He shook his head and told her the truth. She had always been there. He had just been lucky enough to recognize it again. As she walked home that night, the city felt different. Not bigger. Not smaller. Just open. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something happening to her. It felt like something she was finally shaping herself. The moment came when she least expected it. Not during a big meeting. Not under bright lights or applause. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind she once spent rushing between tables. She was reviewing reports when she caught her reflection in the glass wall beside her desk. Calm. Focused. Certain. For a second, she barely recognized herself. Not because she had become someone else, but because she had finally stepped fully into who she had always been. Word of her work had spread beyond the building. People sought her opinion now. Asked for her insight. Listened when she spoke. The whispers had faded, replaced by something stronger. Respect. She still worked hard, maybe harder than ever, but the effort felt different. It was building something instead of just keeping her afloat. One evening, she received a message from an old classmate who remembered her from school, surprised to see her name attached to something successful. It made her smile. Life had a way of circling back when you least expected it. She thought about the version of herself who once cleared tables after midnight, wondering if this was all there would ever be. She wished she could tell that woman to hold on a little longer. The billionaire watched all of this quietly. He didn't take credit. He didn't need to. Seeing her stand on her own was enough. In private, he reflected on how easily success can make people forget where they started, and how dangerous that forgetfulness can be. Meeting her again hadn't just changed her path. It had corrected his. They met one last time before she moved into a leadership role of her own. No contracts on the table. No advice left to give. Just two people sharing a moment of honesty. She told him she no longer felt like she was catching up to life. He told her that sometimes the greatest returns come from investments made in people, not numbers. As they parted, there was no dramatic farewell. Just mutual understanding. She walked away with steady steps, knowing she belonged exactly where she was headed. He watched her go, feeling something rare and grounding. Gratitude. The restaurant still stood where it always had. New staff. Same lights. Somewhere inside, someone was rushing, unseen, carrying dreams they didn't yet know how to protect. The thought stayed with him. Success, he realized, wasn't about how high you climb. It was about who you recognize on the way up. And for her, the girl who once believed in a boy with big dreams, the journey had come full circle. Not because someone saved her, but because she was finally given the space to rise.